So I'm gonna just be blunt about my next question, right? There's really some Christians out there that suck. Mm-hmm. And why do Christians suck sometimes?
First of all, let me just validate your statement. There's no doubt. Frankly, I can't tell you, and I don't know if I want this going out to the whole world or not, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I can't tell you how many times I've wished more Christians would act as nice as bartenders do.
Wow.
You know, not that I've sat at a lot of bars. I just see them from a distance. But
no, I get it.
But you know, they seem nice. They seem happy. They seem glad you're there.
Engaged.
Yeah, engaged. And I go to churches sometimes, and they're not at all glad I'm there.
From a Christian perspective, how would you personally handle things like mental illness?
Let me chase this a different way.
Okay.
What has your experience been from the church when you express that you have a diagnosed issue?
I have bipolar disorder, PTSD, anxiety, and ADHD, and possibly autism.
How has the church reacted to that in any way, shape, or form, or Christians in general?
I can speak from experience with my father. The first instance of when I came to him and told him that I was officially diagnosed with depression and anxiety, he kind of just immediately shunned me away, and it reminded me of back like when I was in high school, and I would express like my frustrations, my anxieties. It was more so of you're possessed by a demon, you just have to pray it away type of thing.
I've seen that. I've seen that. It's sad when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
In the last few years, you know, politics is really, I believe, invasively moved into the church. Our church included. And I'll say this, when I first came to New Life, one of my just greatest feelings was seeing that it was roughly half black, half white. Right. We worshiped together, we sat beside each other. There was so much love and so much in common. Right. And then the pandemic hit. And in that same vein, politics has really started creeping into every facet of our lives, including church, to the point where now, I'll be honest with you, I do online service. Mm-hmm. My wife does online service. The reason we do online service is because the views and values of our friends, maybe we just didn't know. Mm-hmm. It's hard. It was hard because these are people that we had relationships with. And how do I come and sit next to these people again? And not because I hate them, but because now I think they hate me. And I'm not saying that this is a black and white issue, because it's not. It's just, it becomes almost a right and left issue, I believe. And it's not that we can't sit together and enjoy different views. It's, do the people we're sitting with really hate us?
The introduction of politics in church is never helpful, no matter which side it comes from.
Without a doubt.
And here's what I think. And I don't know that I'm going to give a satisfactory answer. I think that people just don't think through what we're doing. I mean, the church is not here. Just to be blunt, the church is not here to get anybody elected. The church is not here to get any political or social activism done. But the church is here to preach Jesus and take care of people. Love God, love people. That's what we do. And that's what the church has got to do. And I think when the church gets into politics, it messes up. Let me show you what I think the church is for and what I think they're missing in their minds when Christians just suck, because quite often they do. Let's do it this way. Let's draw this circle and let's say this is you, all right? Mm-hmm. Now, you've asked me why do Christians suck sometimes, so I'm going to make you the one, okay? So, sorry. Sorry, but let's say that's you, all right? And then here, let's say this is God. Now, the thing that is true about Christians, even the ones that aren't nice, even the ones that are the problem, is that they they clearly, it's obvious that they see God. They know God. Can I tell you, there's a lot of Christians out there. There's a lot of Christians out there that I know are going to heaven, but I have no desire to hang out with them till we get there.
Nice.
I mean, I'm just keeping it real. I've been around them. I don't think they're nice. I don't think they're easy to be with, but I know they're saved because I've talked to them. I've listened to them. They see God. They know God. They see Him, but somehow that's the only relationship they're taking care of. And I think sometimes Christians that are mean are so focused on their own spirituality. There's an old phrase that says they become so heavenly minded they're no earthly good. And so they lose perspective.
Now, some people only want this in their lives, and they forget to look out. And when that happens, then anything that they see out here that they can't quite square up here, they'll call it demon possession. They'll call it demonic. They'll call it wrong. The problem is out here is I'm going to use the word them, and I'm only going to use the word them to say anybody that's not me. So anybody that's not in the church with me ends up being a them. Well, when I look at them and all I can see is the devil, then I'm messing up. Here's the problem. You look back in and they see me, see God. And when they see me see God, and that God seems hateful because I'm hateful, or that God seems to be calling them devil possessed because that's what I'm calling them, then they're never actually going to look at God.
If I'm spending all my time talking about my own personal political stuff, it's not even about God. But they think they see me seeing God. They suddenly attach my God to whatever political position I've taken. And when they do that, they don't actually see a God worth following. So they never actually look up to see Him. If they see something in you that is worthwhile, then and only then will they look up and they see God. I think Christians that suck forget that's there. I really do. I think a lot of mean-spirited Christians have forgotten that this whole part exists, that there's a whole world of people out there that are staring at them, and when they're mean-spirited or when they're ugly, they have no desire to look up at their God.
If they're just looking at me and I'm not showing them a Jesus that's worth following, they're not going to find anything. But if they look at me and they see a Jesus that's worth following and gets it and accepts them for who they are and what's going on in their lives, they'll look to God, and God can actually heal them. I can't, but God can. Ultimately, what I want to see the church do is understand that, yeah, there's a spiritual, there's a physical, there's an emotional. What we're trying to do is bring balance to all three, which means we've got to understand the mental health side of this thing, and understand it for what it is, and not be so quick to just call everything a devil problem. Instead, I think we need to understand that God can bring healing, and if we can show the world that kind of a relationship with God, they'll look to God and find it for themselves. So I hope that's helpful.
That was very helpful, and I definitely agree with that. Like for someone who takes medication, I used to hate it, but then I realized I have now this perspective that God blessed somebody to be able to have the knowledge to create these medications too, and in turn help me. So I try to think of it that way, and so I don't outcast other people, and rather bring them in and be like, hey, God is actually trying to help you. You just have to accept it.
Absolutely. And let me say in this setting, as the pastor in this setting, when you're prescribed a medication for something, that's not a sign of weakness. That's not, if somebody gives you medication for cancer, that's not a sign of weakness. That's a sign of strength. You're fighting it. Same thing with mental illness. If you need a medication to get you through it, this medication is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength because you're fighting it. I don't personally know Christians right now that would reject the idea of medicine or that reject the idea of mental health within the Christian community, but I knew some. I got to tell you, a lot of Christians throughout history have gone there, and it's damaging. It's very damaging.
I often say this: you're the only God some people will ever see. And if you're the only God some people are ever seeing, what God are they looking at? Are they looking at a God that's Republican, or a God that's Democrat, or a God that's rich, or a God that's poor, or a God that's white, or a God that's black? They can't be looking at a God that's any of those things. They got to be looking at a God that rises above all those things, that has the capacity to ride above all those things. One of the things that is beautiful about New Life is the diversity in the church. And we have, you know, we have people from all over the place. We have people that are not American born. We have people that are born in the U.S. We have people that are white, people that are black, people that are Asian, people that are Latino. You have all of this inside the church, but we don't worship a God that is any of that. We worship a God that is entirely other. We talked about that in the Trinity. We worship a God that is entirely other than us. And when we focus on Him, all the rest of this can melt away. Now, in an American cultural context, right now, I don't know how we fix the political problem. I'm just going to be honest. I don't know how we ever get to the point that we can have an actual political conversation again. So.
Well, and I want to, even by your drawing, I want to delve a little deeper, because my issue is, if I'm here watching my fellow church member,
yes,
and I watch them through social media,
right,
and that's how they see God, then I wonder, am I seeing God wrong, or is that the God they see? When they talk about the only good politician is a dead politician, which can be hilarious, but on the other side,
can be dangerous,
right? And when you see them retweeting, somebody looking like a monkey because they happen to be an African American politician, and we go to church. Now, mind you, some of these things are jokes, and I think most folks can laugh them off. But
none of that is acceptable, is biblically acceptable, or culturally acceptable inside of the church. The church, you must love God and love people, and you can't love people by demeaning them or calling for their death. There's no love in that. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. You got to love God and love people. And when there's something like that out there, that's not just church humor. There's not good humor in that, and B, there's no place in the church for that. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, I just think that trying to resolve that, living in that, the tension of missing, and this is where my family is now, of really missing the community versus going and not feeling a part of the community, or not really wanting to be a part of that community because it's not what you thought it was. And therein lies that tension. What do we do next? And I know I'm not the only one who's thinking about this. How do I sit next to these people, because they're still going to be there? And in fact, church is that's their hiding place. That's where they know they're right, because they're Christians. And I say that in that almost comical sense of, I've seen a lot of, they call themselves evangelicals, and that that's their standfast, that's their readout, and I'm sure you've heard about that.
Let me try this. If the church and the pastor is doing everything they can to accomplish this with everybody that's sitting there, right? But we got a few people that are pushing it over here toward politics, right? And you decide, because this makes you uncomfortable, you're not going to come. Who's going to support the pastor in trying to make people do that?
And I'll tell you,
I'm not trying to give you a guilt trip.
No, you're not, because it's but it's very similar to going to the gym. And I know you may not want to hear this. That's why I'm using these terms. It's a lot easier to not go to church.
No, I don't disagree with that.
Than it is to go to church. And that habit was formed over, will and effort, and then it became, that's part of our life.
But why is it easier to go to the gym? Because all you're focused on in the gym is building your body and building your health. You're focused on what that's supposed to be focused on.
Correct.
We've got to keep focusing in the church what we've got to focus on. Yeah, there are some people doing this. And you and I both could sit here and we could talk about it. And we all know
On both sides,
we could talk
everybody's
about
got their, yeah.
But the truth is, this is not what it's about. It's like going to the gym. If somebody goes to the gym and they walk in the middle of the gym and try to give a political speech, it's not going to work.
We all have our headphones on.
Yeah, y'all have your headphones on. And you know full well, like I've had politicians that want to preach at the church live, and I'm like, no, you can't do that.
I think people do forget that even if you're not a pastor, you're part of a church. And people outside the church are watching, people inside the church, your family is watching. So I agree, though. I think
as they watch us, they have to see us looking at God.
Yes,
not some politician or not some program or some. They've got to see us looking at God. We got to keep God the center of the whole thing. And if we don't, we're done.
Yeah.
So.